section. Okay. I co-founded and helped manage East Rock Capital, a multifamily investment office. I also co-chair the SON Investment Conference, which raises money for pediatric cancer research. I set up East Rock 14 years ago. I worked at two investment firms. I graduated from Yale in 96. I'm on Twitter, where I'm Duncan NYC, and LinkedIn. I'm always looking for new ways of, okay, I think Grok might get something up. I'm always looking for new ways of seeing reality, particularly the reality of what makes people tick. Sometimes I imagine I'm a blind man in a pool trying to sense the way particular people and memes are moving through the water. My 2020 plan is to occasionally send out a short list of ideas and people I think are worth sharing. Highlights from good books, podcasts, poems, good questions, basically any interesting people or ideas I've come across and found particularly credible or thought-provoking. Sign up if you're interested. Okay, interesting. Life story in 5 chapters. Dan McAdams, a Northwestern, has studied people's life stories and has instructions on how to outline one. Please begin by thinking about your life as if it were a book or novel. Imagine that the book has a table of contents: apprenticeship, early success, then wandering in the desert. Wow, wow. That is how your 20s look like. Apprenticeship, early success, then wandering in the desert. You always get the early success, and then you're like, okay, now that I got this, it feels meaningless. What's next? What is the long-term thing? About your life as it were a book or a novel. Imagine that the book has a table of contents containing the titles of the main chapters in the story. To begin here, please describe very briefly what the main chapters in the book might be. Please give each chapter a title. Tell me just a little bit about what each chapter is about, and let's say a word or two about how we get from one chapter to the next. Okay. Suppose 20 years is third culture kid, 20s is apprenticeship, early success, then wandering in the desert. 30s is building credibility, earning decision space, building a team of teams, building a family. 40s is designing systems, playing with the boundary of the firm. I was born in East Palo Alto. My parents were 60s do-gooders. We left the land of milk and honey for Eastern Kentucky as they started a non-profit, and I was homeschooled for the first several years. I always felt like an outsider in Kentucky, an alien being. Some people call this pattern third culture kids. I still feel that way. When I was 14, we moved to NH. NH is North Hampshire, Northern Hampshire. And I started rowing single scull. At a moment of ignition in eighth grade, where I saw two high school seniors rowing, and I said, I want to be that. I started training 4 hours a day for 4 years and won 9 national championships, which gave me a strong sense of hard work is equal to results. And I went to Yale and loved every minute of it. Apprenticeship, early success, then wandering in the desert. In 96, I came to NYC to start a company with a professor of mine at Yale named Richard Medley. We hit various roadblocks pivoted in modern parlance and built a private sector intelligence firm that the Financial Times eventually bought after I left. Private sector intelligence firm. I discovered that my talent, this seems very similar to what Scott Galloway was doing with his brand agency firm, business analytics firm. I discovered that my talent was finding the right person for the right job, seeing people clearly, routing their energy to productive places, getting them into positive feedback loops. I also became sensitive to how information leaks, how it moves. I became highly sensitive to being hustled. I left 4 years later to start my own thing rather than continue producing someone else's show. I meandered around various projects for 2 years. It felt like wandering in the desert. I was a bit lost. Then I tried going back to working for others at two multi-manager funds and learned a lot from two great mentors. But I wasn't so good at being an employee after running a large firm. Since 2005, at the age of 31, I started another company, East Rock Capital. 30s, building credibility, earning decision space, building a team of teams, building a family. I partnered with a family that owns one of the largest home building firms to build an investment firm to manage family wealth. I convinced Adam Shapiro, a friend from Yale, to leave Goldman and join me in running the firm. Hmm. Yale, Goldman, investment mentors. I think, yeah, once you get into this upper echelon of network, what they are basically doing is investments because that is the highest leverage task. That is the highest leverage work you can do. Investment banking, investments. We happen to we happen to start right before. I also want to give a shout out to Daniel Atia, whose whose blog I read yesterday, where he talks about retired at 33 and he talks about his entire journey, how he was working at Goldman Sachs, and he talks about some interesting things like, let's say, I forgot the term he used, but basically golden handcuffs, where people are chasing things just because other people are chasing them. Mimetic, mimetics. I think that's what it's called. Mimetic. But anyways, and how by just giving a lease on a nice apartment and a Rolex, people are lured, like kids, young people are lured into dedicating their entire life to these companies, and then they keep chasing just because everybody else is chasing. So very interesting. We happened to start right before the global financial crisis. I felt like we were in the middle of building an ark to survive a 100-year flood, and we got the storm on year one. We had enough of it done that hoped that we hopped on board and continued building at sea. Over that decade, we got really good at assessing people's credibility and giving them the right decision space based on that assessment. We have seeded a number of investment firms that have grown quite large and are world class at what they do. My 40s, designing systems playing with the boundary of the phone. Today, we manage $2 billion for five families. And over the last 14 years, we have woven a thick web of trust among ourselves at each rock, our clients, and our investment partners. Chapter 5. Now, this is all just a story. I actually don't believe that there are chapters. If you think I can help you in some way, please DM me on Twitter. Okay. And what does Twitter has? Pretty much the same thing. American investor, entrepreneur, thought leader, expertise in talent assessment, investment management. So talent assessment is something really cool. Like young people who get their early success and now they're like, I want to do something for the long term, or in general. I am like a smart person. They just need the right place where they can dedicate the talents, where they can contribute the talents, and they also have a good set of people around them to help them grow. And also they have positive feedback loops. So they keep going and they keep evolving. Multi-family office that manages billions in assets and is often described as a talent whisperer for his unique approach to identifying and nurturing high potential individuals in the finance world. Hmm. Homeschool, moved to New Hampshire. Right? I don't know why I said Northern Hampshire. Discovered rowing, nine national championship, professional career, founded a company with Yale professor, sold to Financial Times, 2 billion for a small number of families, focusing on seeding and investing in emerging investment managers. On Investment Conference, annual event that brings together top investors to raise funds for pediatric cancer research. Okay. 5,000 investment managers in his career, developing frameworks for evaluating talent that he shares through writing and speaking engagements. He views talent as the best asset class and emphasizes psychological insights. So he has a podcast with Tim Ferriss, and maybe we'll look into that, and emphasizes psychological insights in his investment philosophy. Duncan maintains a blog, explores topics like talent, personal development, and innovative thinking, appeared on prominent podcasts, multi-hour discussion on Invest Like the Best, delve into career ignition moments, pricing talent, and life frameworks, understanding human behavior, seeking new ways of seeing reality, creating ideas from. Okay, got it. I like this one, so let's look at this one first. Letter to a friend who just made a lot of money. Prompted by a question from a friend who had just made a lot of money, but as I crafted them, I realized that the habits of mind he would need to cultivate to manage his own good fortune also apply to other circumstances. Quieting your own ego to see clearly your own strengths and weaknesses, assessing what areas other people are highly credible on, and then giving them the decision space to execute, designing your system to be anti-fragile. All are skills that improve your odds of success in any field or endeavor. Dear John, congratulations on your exit. You asked me how to think about it all. So here are some initial thoughts. All right, let's first look at the headings. So, number one, take your time and design an anti-fragile system. Identify what you're good at and how you're going to use that strength. Figure out how you're going to build trust with your manager. So, manager who's going to manage your money. Okay, that's it. Take your time, design an anti-fragile system. It's important to have a background assumption that there's no hurry. Sit on cash as the default. The stock market could be going vertical right now. It could be plunging. What the market is doing is irrelevant. What your friends are doing is irrelevant. As Charlie Munger says, the idea of caring that someone is making money faster than you are is one of the deadly sins. Envy is a really stupid sin because it's the only one you could never possibly have any fun at. Hmm. Charlie Munger is basically saying all the sins are fun, all the sins are pleasurable except this one, except envy. Envy is really stupid sin because it's the only one you could never possibly have any fun at. Wait, what are all the sins? What are all the types of sins? And let's do Grok 3. So it's Hapit. Christian framework, seven deadly sins. Okay, so pride. You can have fun in pride. Hmm. Pride, greed. Okay, so money, lust, envy, gluttony. So food. Okay, wrath, anger. You cannot have fun in anger. And sloth, laziness, neglecting responsibilities due to lack of motivation. Laziness or apathy, particularly in spiritual or moral matters. Okay. Hmm. I don't know what Charlie Munger means over here. Envy is a envy is a really stupid sin because it's the only one you could never possibly have any fun at. There's a lot of pain and no fun. Why would you want to get on that trolley? When we manage capital for wealthy families, we sit on cash all the time. Don't get on the envy trolley. Sit in cash, enjoy it. While you do, read some good books. Hmm. Don't get on the envy trolley. Sit in cash and enjoy it. While you do, read some good books. One book on wealth management I often recommend is The Aspiration Investor by Ashwin Chabra. Ashwin was head of an endowment, wrote the book while serving as CIO of Merrill Lynch Wealth Management, and today oversees a hedge fund manager's family office. So he was the CIO of Merrill Lynch Wealth Management, okay, and today oversees a hedge fund manager's family office. He's a doctor's doctor in that respect. Yeah, because hedge fund manager is already the guy who's making a lot of money, and this guy manages is pretty much a hedge fund manager. Hmm, really cool, really cool. He's a doctor's doctor in that respect. I find him highly credible on this set of topics. Okay, so we can do a grok on this. Give me key takeaways from the book Aspiration Investor by Ashwin Chabra. Okay, this is very interesting. When we manage capital for wealthy families, we sit on cash all the time. Don't get on the envy trolley. Sit in cash and enjoy it. While you do, read some good books. Nassim Taleb. Nassim Taleb's works also have a lot of signal in them, even if his writing style makes it tricky to find at times. Talib is on the benefits of cash and a barbell strategy. If you put 90% of your funds in boring cash and 10% in very risky, maximally risky securities, you cannot possibly lose more than 10%, while you are exposed to massive upside. Hmm. Someone with 100% in so-called medium risk securities has a risk of total ruin from the miscomputation of risks. If you put 90% of your funds in boring cash and 10% in very risky, maximally risky securities, you cannot possibly lose more than 10% while you are exposed to massive upside. Someone with 100% in so-called medium risk securities has a risk of total ruin from the miscomputation of risks. This barbell technique remedies the problem that risks of barbell strategy basically mean work on the extremes, no medium. You either go full cash or full high risk. And full cash is 90% and full high risk is 10%. You don't do anything medium. This barbell technique remedies the problem that risks of rare events are incomputable and fragile to estimation error. Here, the financial barbell has a maximum known loss. For anti-fragility is the combination of aggressiveness plus paranoia. Clip your downside, protect yourself from extreme harm, and let the upside, the positive black swans, take care of itself. The positive black swan. Hmm. Aggressiveness plus paranoia. Clip your downside, protect yourself from extreme harm, and let the upside, the positive black swans, take care of itself. Design an anti-fragile system for you, your family, and your money. Talib has a great, quick test for anti-fragility. If you have more to lose than to benefit from events of fate, there is an asymmetry and not a good one. You are fragile. Hmm. Identify what you're good at and how you're going to use a strength. A founding client, the CEO of a large home builder, is fond of saying that it's common for people to make money like professionals and then invest it like amateurs. Warren Buffett says that if you don't know who the dumb money at the poker table is, you are the dumb money. In order to avoid being the amateur or the dumb money, I would first try to establish what you and people who know you well believe you have a lot of credibility in doing. For one wealthy family I know, that meant that they reserve 5% of total assets for one family member to invest in art. For another, who was a doctor, they reserved up to 10% to pursue healthcare related investments. Interesting. I would first try to establish what you and people who know you well believe you have a lot of credibility in doing. Okay. Invest in art, invest in healthcare related investments. Other give 100% of it to an in-house or outsourced chief investment officer. When you eventually become a father and are debating, wow, this is so interesting. This is so interesting. Like the best the best chief investment officer of a family office would be doing nothing. He would be just reading books. And he's like, if you are really, really good at it, you are like Rick Rubin. You are like, I don't know. I'm not good at playing a piano. I cannot play instruments. I'm not technical. I just know what's good. Uh, so you are not doing that much work from outside, from an outside perspective. It might look like you are extremely lazy person. You are because you are not moving and you're constantly not making decisions. It might seem like you are a lazy person, you are incompetent, people might not trust you, but when it's time for results, you have the results. So that is very interesting. A good chief investment officer is everybody would be jealous of a good chief investment officer, good CIO, because you have taste, you have insight, you know what's good. Hmm. And you have the most efficient process to get there. So you are not moving around, you are not hustling around. And some people might think you are not working hard. When you eventually become a father and are debating whether to let one of your kids have the money to invest, start them off with a small amount of decision space, small amount of capital, and then see how they do objectively. Having relatives invest your capital without earning the credibility in the markets or private business arena first will only make for tense Thanksgiving meals and lousy returns. More generally, I have come to believe that any non meritocratic allocations of capital dials up the fragility in the system. General Stan McChrystal, who together with his Chief of Staff Chris Fusel led the US military's Joint Special Operations Command, observed that their job is running all of the special forces units in Afghanistan was to assess the various team captains' credibility and then give them the appropriate amount of decision space based on that assessment. To allocate decision space, they used a basic formula. Credibility is equal to proven competence plus relationships plus integrity. I'm surprised it's not multiplied, but plus. So credibility is proven competence plus relationships plus integrity. Okay, very cool. With that, I'll quickly grab water. quickly grab water. All right, we are back. Credibility is equal to proven competence plus relationships plus integrity. I see the task of managing a pool of one. I see the task of managing a pool of one family's or foundation's capital as essentially that same exercise. Assess people's credibility on a given activity and then give them the appropriate amount of decision space based on that assessment. What you need to do is assess your own credibility and that of potential partners, and then decide how to divide up the decision space over your capital. It's important to take your own ego out of it and assess your own competitive advantage with clear eyes. Warren Buffett gave his entire savings. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Warren Buffett gave his entire savings to Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to manage his charitable giving. He had a quiet ego. What? He gave the best investment guy is giving his money for someone else to invest. Okay. He had a quiet ego and saw that they could do it better than he could ever realistically do himself. Bill Gates owns a ton of Berkshire Hathaway. Okay, but this is charitable giving. Okay, so that makes sense. They just really specialize in the charitable space. Buffett is more in the investment space and value investing space. All right. Bill Gates owns a ton of Berkshire Hathaway because he knows that Buffett is much more credible on making investments than Gates will ever be himself. Hmm. Okay. Okay. So Warren Buffett has given his allocation for charitable giving to Bill Gates, and Bill Gates has given his allocation for investments to like just in general investments to Warren Buffett. Yet, even as you divide up the decision space, you need to remember that no piece of it should ever be shared. One person owns each discrete decision space. Chris Fusel stresses that in order for the structure to work, leaders and in the special forces operators must have a shared understanding of accountability and autonomy. In the special operations community, the most effective leader sends an implicit but clear message to the forces operating under him. I understand the complexity of the environment. I understand that you must move faster than your structures allow for, and that you understand your problems better than I ever could. I will create spaces for you to organically communicate and share information. I will empower you to make decisions and execute. I can help guide us on the path, but only you can win the war. I trust you to do that. Hmm. I understand the complexity of the environment. I understand that you must move faster than your structures allow for, and that you understand your problems better than I ever could. I will create spaces for you to organically communicate and share information. I will empower you to make decisions and execute. I can help guide us on the path, but only you can win the war. I trust you to do that. This is the kind of message you should try to send to the people investing on your behalf, whether that's an outsourced CIO, an internal CIO of your family office, or a set of teams that you try to recruit. If you don't trust the people to manage your money, sit in cash. If you do, give them the money and follow an eyes on, hands off policy. The no man's land which we see people fall into all the time is where the capital owner wants to have one foot on the playing field and one foot off, suggesting ideas to the manager of the capital without having to execute them. That puts the manager in a uniquely bad position. If they pursue the investment and it doesn't work, they get the blame. If it does work, the owner gets the credit. Several prominent family offices have gone through way too many CIOs to count because of this dynamic. Now, no one credible will ever again take the job because they correctly realize that it's a tails you win, heads I lose proposition. Hmm. When if I lose, I take the blame. If I win, you take the credit. Hmm. And it's already hard enough to get the best investors to work for you since they know that they can usually make more on their own or as a partner in another firm that they than they will working for another principal. In Fusel's description, the operator offers an implicit response back to the leader. We understand that you are building us the space to thrive, but that it is ultimately our journey to take. We see you humbling yourself to the reality of the complex fight. We trust you to protect our ability to move with speed and adaptability. We will rise to the challenge and hold ourselves accountable to the outcome. Wow. These are like proper scripts to build that relationship. We trust you to protect our ability to move with speed and adaptability. We will rise to the challenge and hold ourselves accountable to the outcome. This message is remarkably similar to what the best performing investment managers communicate to their sources of capital and what we hope our clients hear from us. The bottom line is that giving your team captains both autonomy and accountability is critical. So I don't know if I think Graham should also let. I think he should say that naturally people will come up with ideas. Principal will come up with ideas. So how do you communicate that idea? Like because this is a problem that is seen everywhere, where the head has an idea and they so what do they do with it? Are they not going to share with the operator? Are they not going to share that idea with the operator? Because at the end of the day, that is the thing, right? Like the head is supposed to be the principal is supposed to be thinking, reading, communicating, building relationships, working at a higher level on strategy. And then they come up with a thesis, an idea, and then they communicate that with the operator, and then the operator actually goes and execute it. So, yeah, I don't know. I think Graham should clarify that. Like, what should the principal do when they have an idea, and at least obviously, they don't know if the idea is right until until that idea has contact with reality, until it gets market feedback. So, how do you get market feedback? Is it like, oh no, no, leave the operator alone and you go and get market feedback for yourself? Or is there a better way to communicate that no, 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 you do this. If you fail, I'll take the blame. If you win, you get the credit. Figure out how you're going to build trust with your manager. Assessing credibility and building trust is a skill and it's learnable. It's like a startup CEO who has to hire an engineer or a salesperson without necessarily being good at that role themselves. You need to get a good hiring process in place. I have a question I ask candidates when I'm hiring them for a skill set I don't have. If you're going to hire someone to do this, what criteria would you use? The answer is often wildly different from apparently similar people with similar backgrounds and reveals what they believe to be critical based on their experience. When it comes to a CIO to manage your capital, I would answer that question with the following criteria. Someone who can provide evidence that they have good taste in people, has an ability. Yeah, taste, as we mentioned, you're basically Rick Rubin. All you have is amazing taste. That is your that is your highest skill. There's an ability to assess other people's credibility and give them the appropriate amount of decision space and attracts the top talent by exuding an attitude of abundance about fees and opportunities and implicit message. Let's compound our capital together. Someone with a quiet ego who is pragmatically focused on making money for you and themselves, assuming they have incentive compensation, not on scoring status points or constantly proving to you how smart they are. As Talib puts it, deep down they want to win, not win an argument. Hmm. Someone who is conservative by nature hates losing money with a passion, but paradoxically can still take good risk and has that unusual mix of aggression and paranoia. I close with Talib's observation that the Stoic Seneca understood that success has the potential to make you fragile. When you become rich, success has the potential to make you fragile. I'm guessing, so let's predict what Seneca is going to say. Seneca is going to say that when you are successful, you believe that you know how to be successful and you will keep being successful, and you forget that you might also fail. You have this big ego. You are surrounded by yes men. Everybody is trying to sell you on things. There are too many opportunities coming to you, and so you don't know which one to commit to. The decision making process becomes really hard, and you become less critical of everything, and then something breaks. Well, let's see. When you become rich, the pain of losing your fortune exceeds the emotional gain of getting additional wealth. Okay, this is also true. This is also really true. I think somebody said that, hey, if you made $10 million, you'll be really happy. But if someone who already had 30 million and he lost 20 million and now he has 10 million, he's going to be sad. So even though you both have $10 million, one person is going to be really happy, one person is going to be really sad. Because losing money, losing what you already had, is a negative feeling, is a negative emotion. When you become rich, the pain of losing your fortune exceeds the emotional gain of getting additional wealth. So you start living under continuous emotional threat. A rich person becomes trapped by belongings that take control of him, degrading his sleep at night, raising the serum concentration of his stress hormones, diminishing his sense of humor, perhaps even causing hair to grow on the tip of his nose and similar ailments. Seneca fathomed that possessions make us worry about downside, thus acting as a punishment as we depend on them. Even more dependence on circumstances, rather the emotions that arise from circumstances induces a form of slavery. Okay, okay. Not at all what I would mention. I think he's talking more of possessions, and he's specifically focused on this emotion that you become you get into the wealth preservation mode instead of wealth creation mode. And wealth preservation basically means fear of loss. Fear of loss? Yeah, fear of loss of wealth. Even more dependence on circumstances, rather the emotions that arise from circumstances induces a form of slavery. I meet a lot of rich people, and many of them are what Taleb and Seneca might describe as surprisingly fragile. The events of fate pose more downside than upside for them. The events of fate pose more downside than upside for them. Don't let your new fortune make you fragile. Wow. This is the entire book of Nassim Taleb, Anti-Fragile. Wow. A rich person becomes trapped by belongings that take control of him, degrading his sleep at night, raising the serum concentration. Is this what Seneca said? Serum concentration of his stress hormones? Diminishing his sense of humor. I think this is Talib said. Okay. Talib's observation that the Stoic Seneca understood. Okay. So Seneca might have phrased in a different way. Diminishing his sense of humor, perhaps even causing hair to grow on the tip of his nose and similar ailments, Seneca fathomed that possessions make us worry about downside, thus acting as a punishment as we depend on them. Even more dependence on circumstances rather than emotions that arise from circumstances induces a form of slavery. What does Seneca say about success has the potential to make you fragile? Say on how to be anti-fragile when you get success. Let's see. Wow. Okay. Mhm. So Grok understands that when we say anti-fragile, we're talking about the Nassim Taleb concept, the shortness of life. Guard against pride and complacency. Success can breed arrogance and overconfidence, which makes one fragile to setbacks. In letters to Lucilius, okay, what is this? Seneca's writings, particularly his letters to Lucilius and essays like On the Shortness of Life, offer Stoic principles that align closely with anti-fragility, especially in the context of handling success. Okay. He advises practicing humility and self-awareness, noting that fortune is fickle and can reverse quickly. To be anti-fragile, one must treat success as transient, avoiding the trap of believing it's permanent. Hmm. Anti-fragile application. Success can inflate ego, making you vulnerable to overreaching or ignoring risk. Seneca suggests constant self-examination and gratitude to stay grounded, ensuring you adapt and learn from success rather than becoming dependent on it. Embrace adversity as a teacher. In On Providence, Seneca argues that adversity strengthens character, comparing it to a fire that tempers steel. Success without struggle can soften resilience, but welcoming challenges even during prosperous times builds enduring strength. This is so interesting. I think this is something I heard from Chris Williamson, who's like, after getting to a point where he pretty much has everything, when he was doing his work and he was still getting the pleasure, he was still getting the reward. He's like, at this point now that I know how to get things done and I know I'm getting a reward, I actually wanted to put more work in because getting reward without a lot of struggle felt bad. So even though he knew he's good and he can get a reward with minimal effort, he still wanted to put more effort to get a bigger reward or the same reward just so that he feels better about it. That is very interesting. Embrace adversity as a teacher. To thrive post success, deliberately seek small, controlled stressors, voluntary discomfort, new challenges to maintain adaptability. This prevents the fragility that comes from prolonged ease. Focus on what you control. Seneca emphasizes controlling your reactions and virtues, not external outcomes like controlling your reactions and virtues, not external outcomes like wealth or fame. Success often brings external validation, which can create dependence on others' opinions, making you fragile to criticism or loss of status. By anchoring our identity in internal virtues, wisdom, courage, temperance. What is temperance? Temperance would mean temperance. Temperance would mean maintaining the same temper. Hmm. You become less swayed by success's highs or lows, gaining strength from independence. Focus on what you control, create independence on others' opinions, making you fragile to criticism or loss of status. Prepare for a reversal of fortune. In on the happy life, practicing premeditatio malorum. Premeditatio malorum. Visualizing potential failures or losses even in times of success. He writes, fortune falls heavily on those to whom she is unexpected. This mental rehearsal builds resilience. Anti-fragile application, anticipating downturns while successful, keeps you adaptable, turning potential shocks into opportunities for growth. For example, a successful investor might diversify to prepare for market crashes, gaining from volatility. Limit desire and attachment to success. Seneca cautions against chasing endless desires as success often fuels greed or ambition. Fuels greed or ambition. Hmm. Against chasing endless desires. On tranquility of mind, he advocates contentment with what's sufficient, freeing you from the fragility of insatiable wants. Freeing you from the fragility of insatiable wants. By detaching from the need for more wealth, status, you reduce exposure to disruptions caused by loss. This mindset allows you to capitalize on success without being enslaved by it. Cultivate wisdom through reflection. Seneca urges daily reflection to learn from experiences. Success provides data, wins, mistakes, and near misses that can strengthen your judgment if analyzed. He writes, no one is so old that he cannot improve. Treat success as a laboratory for growth. Laboratory for growth. Reflect on what worked and why. Then stress test your strategies to ensure they hold under pressure, making you stronger for future challenges. Okay, very interesting. And now this was very interesting. Okay. Prepare for reversal of fortune, limit desire and attachment to success, cultivate wisdom through reflection. I think one very interesting business idea that somebody came up with was that, hey, there are so many rich people and they have become sad. They have become sad because they are so rich and they have everything going for them and they have all the money, they have all the abundance, they have a nice house. And now what they really crave for is struggle. So I think it was Sam Power from My First Million podcast. And he was like, why not create a reality TV show where you take a bunch of these rich people who miss the struggle, who miss the grind, and who want to kind of live under low means and basically bring them to a forest and get them into a survivor like show where you are supposed to survive in this really bad conditions, like not the same luxuries that you have at home, for like 30 days or something. So people are craving that. That's very interesting. Cultivate wisdom through reflection. Embrace adversity as a teacher. Guard against pride and complacency. So we read this. Let's look into this question we asked about the aspiration investor. Should focus from beating the market to personal goals. So this is by Ashwin Chabra. Traditional investing often prioritizes outperforming market benchmarks, but the book argues that true success comes from aligning investments with individual aspirations such as financial security, lifestyle maintenance, and ambitious wealth creation. Investors should define their why for wealth to avoid common pitfalls like poor timing and emotional decisions. Critique of modern portfolio theory. Empathy focuses on balancing risk and return through diversification, but fails to protect against personal risks like job loss or market crashes. Nor does it account for idiosyncratic risks that drive significant wealth creation. Hmm. Personal risk like job loss or market crashes. Mhm. It's like, oh, you can make the right investments, but you might just lose your investment job. Nor does it account for idiosyncratic risks that drive significant wealth creation. The book highlights how MPT overlooked the need for investments tailored to life goals rather than generic market performance. Introduction of the Wealth Allocation Framework. WAF. WAF. Wealth Allocation Framework Limited. Exit. Waffle. The score framework divides assets into three buckets based on risk and purpose. Safety, low risk assets like cash, bonds, and insurance to protect essentials. Market, diversified portfolios like stocks and bonds to match inflation and maintain lifestyle. And aspirational, high risk, high reward investments like private businesses or venture capital for wealth, growth, and legacy. Each bucket has its own benchmarks and risk profiles. Okay, so let's look at the three buckets again. Safety, all right, cash, bonds, insurance, blah, blah, blah. Market, diversified portfolio, stock, bond, match inflation, maintain lifestyle. Okay. Aspirational, high risk, high reward investment, private businesses, venture capital. Okay, got it. Behavioral biases and investor psychology. Investors often, my guess is that there's nothing new over here, but let's see. There's nothing new. Like we pretty much know everything. But okay, MPT is something new. I think this is more from the perspective of uh, these chief investment officers for running a family office, running a family fund. So yeah, there are like there's specific like arguments for the fundamentals of chief investment officer for a family fund. So like MPT. Behavioral biases and investor psychology. Investors often underperform due to overconfidence, Dunning-Kruger effect, loss aversion, and herd mentality, leading to poorly timed trades and bubbles. The book advises recognizing these biases and using discipline, goal-oriented strategies to counteract them, blending instinctual and rational decision making. Wealth creation versus preservation. Ultra-wealthy individuals build fortunes through concentrated idiosyncratic risks, entrepreneurship, not diversified portfolios. However, preserving wealth requires shifting to safer allocations. The book notes the fluidity of wealth lists like Forbes 400, where concentration and leverage can lead to gains or losses. Expanded definition of risk. Beyond market volatility, risk includes personal threats, health costs, unemployment, and aspirational exposures, single asset bets. The WAF addresses all three: personal, non negotiable protection, market, diversified growth, and aspirational upside potential with downside acceptance. Personal, you get the protection, market, you get diversification, aspirational, you get upside potential. Okay. Personal threats, health costs, unemployment, and aspirational exposure, single asset bets. Okay. Passive investment, investing advocacy. Active management rarely beats the market after Fees, especially for retail investors. The book praises index funds, Jack Bogle's Vanguard, for consistent low-cost returns, warning against imitating sophisticated strategies like endowments, yields model without institutional safeguards. Historical, he's basically saying like you don't need this chief investment officer. Just put your money into index funds. Historical market insights and volatility. Markets are unpredictable due to creative destruction, industrial and digital revolutions. I think this is interesting, right? Like if you yeah yeah sometimes the most important thing to do is nothing, and it's very hard to do nothing. So the reason why you would have a chief investment officer is because that guy's really stoic. He knows that you don't need to do anything. And when you are very, like, you are getting very, what's the word? Agitated? No. You are getting very finicky? No, 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 no. If you are getting very, whatever, if you are a person who are just like, I want to do something, I want to do something with my money, and that is not the right thing to do. So this is the reason why you have chief investment officer who's actually stoic and who's like, and then you can talk to him. And you're like, hey, I want to put money over here. And then he's like, no, 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 no. That's not what we do. 90% of money stays in cash or index funds. 10% is where we put into high risk things. So it's like the best thing to do is nothing in terms of investment. Just put your money into index funds and just forget about it. But because most people are not able to do that, rich people, they just want to keep making investments. That's the reason they need chief investment officer who is going to keep a check on them that, hey, don't make stupid investments. Most of your money should remain in index funds. It will just keep compounding. Let's make sure it keeps compounding and forget about it, and it's going to keep growing, and your future generations will be taken care of. So that is very interesting. That is another reason why you need a good chief investment officer. Markets are unpredictable due to creative destruction, industrial and digital revolutions, bubbles, tulip mania, dot-com, and sector shifts. Investors must adapt, diversify, avoid over-optimism in assets like real estate. Determining the number for retirement. Calculating needed wealth is subjective, influenced by lifestyle and Maslow's hierarchy. Essential needs first. Many underestimate savings rate, 35% of income versus typical 3 to 5%. And the book stresses quantifying goals as cash flows. Quantifying goals as cash flows. Hmm. 7 steps to implement WAF, wealth allocation framework. Yes, wealth allocation framework. Outline categorize goals, essential, important, aspirational. Convert goals to cash flows, quantify amounts needed. So, in terms of what is your monthly requirement, $4,000, $5,000 per month. Create a wealth allocation snapshot, assets, liabilities by bucket. Assess risk allocation, objective, subjective factors like age, wealth ratio. Implement asset allocation diversification per bucket. Stress test the portfolio, market crashes, job loss, review and rebalance annually. This process ensures resilience and alignment with life changes. Really cool. Okay, now we'll go back and maybe let's look into, I want to look into this infinite games. Let's see. Let's see. Looks like very philosophical stuff. All right, infinite games. Lately, I've been thinking that if I have one particular skill, it is finding great partners and building trust with them. I love discovering the topics and areas to which each person I meet brings unusually high credibility and constructing systems that have as many people as possible doing what they love to do. When it works, those systems are less fragile, anti-fragile, even because of the way everyone is operating in their zone of genius. That area beyond their zone of competence. Let's see what this links to. Is this his own blog? No. Oh, very short. Okay. Jim Detmer. Detmer. That area beyond their zone of competence and even the zone of excellence, the thing they most love to do. For me, there is no end to this activity, no prize or summit where I'm done and will feel satiated. To build trust is enjoyable in its own right. It's what the philosopher James Carse calls an infinite game. A couple of years ago, I had the chance. Today's Signal said something about infinite games. So let's also, I just want to look into it quickly. Signal, one man's slop is another man's. Wow, this is so smart. If this is done intentionally, one man's slop is another man's, like Signal's treasure. Wait, this is so smart. If this is done like, I think he has thought through this. One man's slop is another man's treasure. That's the cover photo, but when you look here, it's one man's slop is another Signal's treasure. No, I don't know. I don't know. Lives in New York. Okay. In the mobile era, we got infinite scroll. With AI, we get infinite everything. Infinite game worlds that never end. Infinite conversations. Infinite content in general. Before abundance becomes the norm in society, we are kind of tasting early infinity in everything digital. Okay. A couple of years ago, I had the chance to ask Cars how he had come up with the idea of an infinite game. He told me a story about watching his kids play. Sometimes their goal was to end the game, to win, to get the trophy. Cars call that a finite game. Other times, their goal was not to win, but to play the game as long as possible and to recruit others to join in an infinite game. As Cars sees it, the rules of a finite game are unique and fixed. If the rules change, this is so interesting. This reminds me of me playing badminton. I used to play badminton. When you are in a game, you're not having that much fun. When you are in a proper match, you're not having that much fun because everybody in badminton is trying to trick you and they are smashing it so you cannot pick it up. They are going it slow so you're gonna pick it up. But the real joy in badminton is when you are smashing the in a way that the other person can return, and then you are just in a what do we call it? What do we call it? Wow. Rally. Then you are in just a rally where you love to smash and the other person is returning, and then you're like smash and return. You are not smashing to make to to beat the other person. You're smashing because you love to smash, but you're also smashing in a way that the other person can actually return. And what you really enjoy is the rally. That rally is really fun. That's infinite game versus finite game. Okay. As Carr sees it, the rules of finite game are unique and fixed. If the rules change, a different game is being played. Think poker. If you change the value of the hands, you're no longer playing poker. You're playing something else. The rules of of an infinite game, in contrast, can change in the course of play. While finite games are, in Carr's explanation, like a boundary, you can approach and step across. Infinite games are like a horizon. As you move toward it, the horizon keeps moving away from you. Finite players play within boundaries, and finite players play with the boundaries themselves. Wow. Infinite players play with the boundaries themselves. When asked Scores for examples of infinite games, he said it was up to the player to determine that for him or herself. For him, however, Buddhism and Judaism are prime examples. Neither has a central authority or army, yet both have persisted for thousands of years. How this has happened, how their way of being in the world persists across generations, is a puzzle for religious studies scholars. Kars believes that the answer lies in the fact that when you ask what is Buddhism or what is Judaism, the question is unanswerable because there is no one answer. Everything depends on context. The game adapts and morphs every time you try to pin it down. They are hard to define because they are not tied to a specific set of rules. That same adaptive quality explains how a handful of investment firms have transcended their founders. I have a theory that Goldman's competitors feel puzzled about Goldman's game. They try to copy the playbook and steal Goldman's people, but it doesn't work. Something intangible doesn't transfer. The brand, the buildings, just the name, it sounds very elite. I have a theory that Goldman's competitors feel puzzled about Goldman's game. They try to copy the playbook and steal Goldman's people, but it doesn't work. Something intangible doesn't transfer. What is Goldman? From my perspective, Goldman is actually quite hard to define. At times, it's like the largest hedge fund in the world. Other times, it's a bank. It's constantly morphed to seize commercial opportunities over the last 150 years. But the words bank or hedge fund don't adequately capture the changing nature of its game. When I asked a former Goldman partner why the firm's dominance persisted, he responded that he wasn't aware of any other firm where people felt confident enough to hire and promote people who were smarter than they were. At Goldman, they placed the value of recruiting new, valuable players to the game ahead of getting some short-term bonus or some other form of trophy. They had a sense of abundance about the opportunity to make money together. Hmm. When I asked a former Goldman partner why the firm's dominance persisted, he responded that he wasn't aware of any other firm where people felt confident enough to hire and promote people who were smarter than they were. At Goldman, they placed the value of recruiting new valuable players to the game ahead of getting some short-term bonus or some other form of trophy. They had a sense of abundance about the opportunity to make money together. That resonated with me because that's how I think of my own version of an infinite game. Finding people, this is cool. We will share this. Goldman. That resonated with me because that's how I think of my own version of an infinite game, finding people who are better than me at doing something, and then doing what I can to help them construct their platform so that they can thrive while operating in their zone of genius. For the last 14 years, my main playing field has been East Rock Capital. Our core skill as a firm is finding and keeping really incredible partners, family clients, the investment managers we partner with, and our team at East Rock. Our guiding ethos to everyone, clients and investment partners, is let's make money together. We find there's ample abundance to go around if you work in the right way with the right people. We've had three eras so far in our East Rock game, conveniently lining up with three different office leases. Well, that is really cool. That is really cool. I think this is true with everything. It's like some of my friends or some people who I know, when they move to New York, they start with uh they don't have enough money. So with whatever money they have, they get into the cheapest apartment possible in New York City, in Manhattan, and then slowly over the years, as their income keeps rising, they keep changing their environment. They keep getting a bigger and bigger house. They keep getting bigger and bigger and better and nicer apartments, and that kind of really is motivating. It kind of every every time you get a new lease to a new nicer apartment, that's like a change of an era, and that kind of sets the tone that okay, we are in a different era now. That marks the new era. I think that is important. In the first era, 2005 to 6, we actually had no lease at all. We were camping with my former boss, who generously gave us space and focused entirely on building credibility and earning decision space with our founding family client, who were enthusiastic but still in trust but verify mode when it came to me. A guy they had just met who always needed a haircut, who always needed a haircut. When I look back, I realize I built the most trust with that first client when I introduced him to my partner, Adam Shapiro, who I had convinced to leave Goldman's proprietary investing group. Over the course of our first handful of meetings, I had this moment of clarity. The client would actually like to hire Adam, but couldn't because Adam wanted to build and co-run East Rock with me. Hmm. I think that lovely tension still exists today. Our investment partners and clients regularly want to hire our entire team, and my and Adam's job is to make this playing field hard to leave. Thanks to the high level of trust, the decision space we each earn, and the constant challenge to find our uncomfortable growth hedges. That is so cool. That is so cool. Our investment partners and clients regularly want to hire our entire team, and my and Adam's job is to make this playing field hard to leave. Thanks to the high level of trust, the decision space we each earn, and the constant challenge to find our uncomfortable growth edges. Second era. In the second era, 2007 to 2017, We had our first home base, a former textile manufacturer's office on 53rd Street near Fifth Avenue, with a backstage view of Central Park. Wow. Our focus was on building trust with each other and adding four other families in the midst of a financial crisis and then the recovery. For me, that decade is summed up by Charlie Munger's observation. In a long lifetime, that the people who really love you are the people where you scramble together with difficulty and you have jointly gotten through. In a long lifetime, that the people who really love you are the people where you scramble together with difficulty and you have jointly gotten through. And in the end, these people will love you more than somebody who just shared in an even prosperity through the whole thing. So, this adversity, basically trauma bonding, you got to go through trauma with someone to truly bond with them. So, this adversity that seems so awful when you are scrambling through actually is the sinecure of your success, your affection, every other damn thing. The idea that life is a series of adversities and each one is an opportunity to behave well instead of badly is a very, very good idea. Wow, wow. The idea that life is a series of adversities and each one is an opportunity to behave well instead of badly is a very, very good idea. For the rest of our lives, Adam and I will remember the moment at the bottom of the market in 2008 when the patriarch of our founding client came to our office and at a time when his own business was facing serious challenges, took us aside to say, "Stop mopping around and play offense, you idiots. There's money to be made out there. We knew we were taking risk when we signed up for this program. Get out there and hustle like I am." Hmm. When his own business was facing serious challenges, took us aside to say, "Stop mopping around and blow offense, you idiots. There's money to be made out there. We knew we were taking risk when we signed up for this program. Get out there and hustle like I am." Talk about an infinite player choosing to play a completely different game from most other of the participants. Almost everyone's instinct in that moment would be to contract rather than expand trust, to micromanage every investment we were making, to second guess this relationship. Our founding family's gift of trust in us during that dark moment has created an amazing competitive advantage for us ever since. We can partner with families and managers in a way that is just different than our competitors. People seem to sense that our time horizon and our web of relationships are not like others. And the people who are awake to this better game often choose to join and partner with us in creative ways. The third era. January 2018 marked the beginning of the third era, our new lease on life. I think of this third era of the trust game as playing with the boundary of the firm. Today, I like to ask who is actually part of East Rock? Where precisely do we mark its boundary? We have beautiful offices on 55th and Park Avenue. And in addition to the 20 people who technically work at East Rock, we house a client and restaurant manager who we back to start a real estate platform, a number of other friends of the firm who are incubating new financial businesses. Think all these players are part of East Rock. They're playing the same game we are. They, like us, take immense pleasure in coming in every day and earning more trust. I remember calling a reference on a manager. The first thing he said to me was, "Look, Graham, I'm really busy. Let me just tell you, I would wire my entire net worth on a handshake to the guy calling me about. Everything else I could say beyond that is commentary." Wow. I remember calling a reference on a manager. The first thing he said to me was, "Look, Ram, I'm really busy. Let me just tell you, I would wire my entire net worth on a handshake to the guy you're calling me about. Everything else I could say beyond that is commentary." Think how pleasurable it would be to hear that from someone you respect. We aspire to have that level of trust with everyone we interact with. While we don't always achieve it, even the aspiration unlocks incredible efficiencies and opportunities. There's a sense of shared values that emerges when you have a collective sense that the goal of the game is to keep playing, not to cash out or take advantage of others. That the goal is to create more value than you capture. Even the aspiration unlocks incredible efficiencies and opportunities. There's a sense of shared values that emerges when you have a collective sense that the goal of the game is to keep playing, not to cash out or take advantage of others. That the goal is to create more value than you capture. The goal is to create more value than you capture. To me, this third era is about expanding this web of trust to build further nodes all over the country and all over the world, recruiting new players to this game, strengthening our team of teams through the diversity of the web and the real-time reconnaissance awareness that all these teams looking for opportunity create. It's like a standing global search function for good investments. I see East Rock as an infinite game, as our evolution through these three eras demonstrates. The rules change and the game goes on. Or rather, the rules change so that the game can go on. Kars ends his book with a meditation on the poet as an enabler of infinite games by unveiling and thus helping us escape the finite games we play unwittingly. I'll close with a favorite poem of mine by Lewis Gluck, in which she unveils some of her finite games. This was amazing. Look, Ram, I'm really busy. Let me just tell you, I would wire my entire net worth on a handshake to the guy you're calling me about. Everything else I could say beyond that is commentary. Parable. First, divesting ourselves of worldly goods, as Saint Francis teaches, in order that our souls not be distracted by gain and loss, and in order also that our bodies be free to move easily at the mountain passes. We had then to discuss whither or where we might travel, with the second question being, should we have a purpose? Against which many of us argued fiercely that such purpose corresponded to worldly goods, meaning a limitation or constriction, whereas others said it was by this word we were consecrated pilgrims rather than wanderers. In our minds, the word translated as a dream, as something sought, so that by concentrating we might see it glimmering among the stones and not pass blindly by. Each further issue we debated equally fully, the arguments going back and forth, so that we grew, some said, less flexible and more resigned, like soldiers in a useless war, and snow fell upon us and wind blew, which in time abated. Where the snow had been, many flowers appeared, and where the stars had shone, the sun rose over the tree line, so that we had shadows again. Many times this happens, also rain, also flooding sometimes, also avalanches, in which some of us were lost, and periodically we would seem to have achieved an agreement. Our canteens hoisted upon our shoulders, but always that moment paused. So after many years, we were still at that first stage, still preparing to begin a journey. But we were changed nevertheless. We could see this in one another. We had changed, although we never moved, and one said, ah, behold how we have aged, traveling from day to night only, neither forward nor sideward, and this seemed in a strange way miraculous. And those who believed we should have a purpose believed this was the purpose. And those who felt we must remain free in order to encounter truth felt it had been revealed. At that first stage, still preparing to begin a journey, but we were changed nevertheless. We could see this in one another. We had changed, although we never moved. And one said, ah, behold, how we have aged, traveling from day to night only, neither forward nor sideward. But and this seemed in a strange way miraculous. And those who believed we should have a purpose believed this was the purpose. And those who felt we must remain free in order to encounter truth